Aloha, we can begin again. If I were with you in person, we wouldn't have these hesitancies across time and space. There's something about the disconnection of these technical forms of connection, in which we know that everything is happening instantaneously. But there is a lack of actual experience of being in the same room with another person. And that creates a bit of a barrier. And we're going to see what we can do to bridge that gap, the gap of that barrier. So I know that you can see me and I cannot see you. And so I'm orienting myself to be with you as you are orienting yourself to be with me. Me in my place, where in the background you will hear roosters, because a good number of them are just next door to me in this house, this place that is single wall construction. And so therefore you're going to hear them throughout the time that we speak with each other. And you are in that time, place, wherever it is that you are, some within the country called America and some outside of this country. But more specifically, you would be inside a dwelling or outside a dwelling, and that place would have meaning for you. And you'd want to connect with that, not with your mind, but with your body itself. So wherever it is that you are, if you would connect to the ground under you. If you are in a chair or sitting on the ground, as I am, that you make sure that the lowest part of your physical body is actually connected to the ground under you. And that you are looking up and looking out to the horizon itself. So beyond the place of seeing me, that you're seeing beyond the technology of your device and you're looking out into that place that is the horizon, including the horizon beyond the dwelling, if you are in a dwelling. And we want to see what we can do to connect with each other, even across this vast distance, by each of us connecting in the place that we are, the place that we are, with our spine as straight as it can be, knowing that we are hunched, those of us who have been connected to devices for too long. And just bring that out, pull our shoulders back and down. And then in that place, we're connected both to the sky above and to the ground below, to connect to ourselves. And so if you may ask permission from yourself to put one hand over the region of your body that is the heart, and to put one hand, the other hand, over the region of your body that is your gut, your core, which for most of us will be in the region that is just below the belly button, right where your belly button is, maybe to cover that with your thumb, but the rest of your hand and the rest of your palm covering your core, and the other hand over your heart. And in this circle that we have created, the ground below, the sky above, one hand on our heart and one on our core, that we're just going to breathe together for a few minutes. We're going to take that breath in just by opening up our lungs, and then exhaling down, low and slow, taking that breath down, slowly, slowly down. Then taking that breath in just by releasing the tension in our body, and exhaling low and slow. And now we're going to breathe together for a bit. And we will know that we're breathing together because our inhale will be silent. But on the exhale, if you will hum with me, make sure that you're not only listening to my hum, but to my hum as it blends with your hum. So be as bold with your hum as you may be. And now we take our breath in silence and hum. Thank you so much. If we were in a room together, then not only may you hear the hum, but you would feel it as well. And those of us who are more open to their senses and perhaps cannot rely on their hearing would be able to feel that vibration before those of us who have hearing would be able to. We would be connected at a different level, which is not a level of our intellectual understanding, but a connection of the vibration between us. To the extent that what would happen is if we had continued that for, say, a mere 7 to 10 minutes, that what would happen is that our very heartbeats will sync up. Our heartbeats will be as one. That was an amazing finding that a little research team discovered accidentally when they were doing biometric measurements of a choir. And as that choir just began to sing with each other, and as a choir sings, they have to follow the same breath pattern in order for their voices to be synced up. That after a mere 7 minutes, that what all of the measurements showed is that their very heartbeats were synced up. The entire choir, breathing as one. So, before we begin, may we breathe together, is the question. May we breathe together. Good and learned friends. Aloha, aloha kako. O Norma, Ryuko, Kawelokū, Wong, ko'u inoa. Ahanau ia au ma kalihi mauka, ma oahu I ka pai aina Hawaii. And what I said in the words of some of my ancestors is that my name is Norma Ryuko Kawelokū Wong. And I was born in the part of Kalihi that is near the mountain. On the island of Oahu, in the archipelago, a string of islands that are called Hawaii. It is customary and good manners among my people to humbly offer self-introduction, one that tells the story of identity and of lineage and of purpose. My language skills in the Hawaiian language in Olelo, Hawaii, don't go much beyond the few words that I have just said. And yet I know in my very bones that having been born in this place that my ancestors have been, on the Chinese side, for over 200 years in this place, and on the Native Hawaiian side, for over 1,500 years. I know that as a 65-year-old person, I am still a child of this land and of this ocean, the ocean that is called the Pacific. On the Chinese side, my people were called Hakka. They are one of the nomadic tribes that traversed thousands of miles in routes that were decades long. And on the Native Hawaiian side, emerging out of that place that is called Taiwan or Formosa, and the northern Philippine Islands, some 3,000 years ago, traversing thousands of miles of open ocean with traditional instrument-free navigation into the myriad of islands in the South Pacific known as Polynesia. And finally, the Polynesians, in one of their final migration trips, came upon the Hawaiian Islands somewhere around the year 400. My story is not unique. You will have your own. All of our peoples had long migrations over thousands of years, and sometimes we crossed back on our original paths, but mostly we radiated outward into the diaspora. The way in which I see the world as an imperfect place that may nonetheless be so much better if we worked with it and for it. The way in which I see the world was shaped very early in the form of questions. My formidable 5th grade public school teacher sent a handful of her students' assignments, her writing assignments, to the local newspaper's opinion editor, who was a former student of hers. And one of my letters to the editor was published. And here's what I said. I asked, why is there a covered playground in Kahala where the sun shines every day, and not in Kalihi where it rains every day? I didn't say in my letter that Kahala was a richer neighborhood, and my beloved Kalihi very much a working class place where a single paycheck separated each of us from being in either public housing or in other kinds of dwellings. And many families would fluidly share shelter and food just because. I didn't know I had a class analysis, one that assumed that everyone had a class analysis as well, and that we could do something about it. My trajectory followed the contours of these early formative thoughts, that it is possible and a responsibility to grow my part of the world, these islands that I live in, into a more fluid whole and not a sum of its parts. I might have become an academic if there had been the economic means. Instead, this college dropout embraced political organizing and community political education and activism, and the conversion of stories of our hopes to policy. Fortunately, as a 20-something policy wonk, I was introduced to a teacher at a moment of significant health risk. There is nothing better to shake a punk of self-importance than a gut-level understanding of the brevity of life. My work took on a time urgency while my horizon of possibility became greater. Why wouldn't you aim for the most significant change, a transformation even, if there's only a short time to make that leap? An existential crisis is not necessarily a bad thing. To question who it is we are and why we are here now. In my line of work as a Zen teacher with policy and strategy chops, these questions form the sweet spot for leaping beyond and accelerating the evolution of human possibility. But a crisis can remain just that if each of our very specific existences, defined in individuality and in unfortunate but exclusive competition, if this form of existence becomes survival at all costs, this fever engulfing much of the world has not yet broken, and the fractures are real and righteous anger justified. There is an olelo no i'au, a traditional saying that goes like this. In the words of my people, e lau hoe mai na wa'a i ke ka i ka hoe, i ke hoe i ke ka, pai aku i ka aina. Everybody paddle the canoes together, bail and paddle and bail, and the shore will be reached. This is a saying that would only work, it would only be a wise saying if in our worldview, we saw and we felt and we understood our life as being in the same canoe. That we valued the strategy of working together, in which it is everybody's job to both paddle and to overcome the challenges of engulfing water. And that we have a shared destination to reach and to be in, not different shores with which we would argue which way we would paddle. In John Powell's words, that we have collectively imagined our future. To collectively imagine, it cannot be a temporary transactional alliance. No long journey into the unknown waters on a small canoe may be launched on the basis of a temporary transactional alliance. The mutuality of our existence, the woven, intertwined mutuality, our universal nature, even in the multifaceted differentiation of the many peoples, some critical understanding of the needs to take root, to be cultivated, to give room and food and sun to grow. I have a picture that I'd like to show you. May we bring it on to the screen? In the traditional woodworking of the islands that have finite resources, you cannot afford to overlook wood if it has a crack or a fracture or an imperfection. You learn over time and apprenticeship of masters before you how to see and how to feel, how to discern where the fracture may be bridged, and the effort, the craftsmanship to make that bridge well. You see and feel and imagine the whole, even as you're holding the wood that has a fracture. This patch, this bridge, is called a pewa, P-E-W-A. The pewa is almost always this shape, this dark shape that you see on this photo, this picture, in this shape like a butterfly. The pewa doesn't cover over the fracture. It isn't cosmetic, although it has its own beauty. The pewa is this word that we call ho'oikaika. It is that which makes stronger. The pewa will make it possible for the ceremonial bowl to hold and even take more stressors than it may be if there was no fracture, and therefore no pewa. So often, so frequently, we defined ourselves as standing on either side of righteous fractures, or perhaps we define ourselves as the fracture itself. To be the pewa will take a good amount of work, and it will be easier if we may imagine with joyous anticipation that it is the effort of becoming a beautiful and functional, that this may be, and as we gain confidence to actually be the pewa that makes this possible for an entire canoe even, not just for a bowl, to become, and one that takes more stressors because it has fractures that a pewa may bridge. Thank you. We can take this picture off now. You know, in my 20s, when I was a young punk, I met a teacher that helped me to more deeply question and to uncover these possibilities. His name is Tanoi Tenshin Rataishi, and he was born Stanley Tanoi, a second-generation Japanese American who grew up among Native Hawaiians. A year before his passing, he called me up late one night, about 1 a.m. I live about a mile down the road, and I thought that his call for me to come up to talk story in the middle of the night was just about me being the closest student. But as it turns out, he wanted to share what was keeping him up late at night. Not only that night, but many nights before. And what was keeping him up is that all of the spirit and faith traditions of the world have for millennia training paths that take many years, as it turns out, an average of 10 years, to become the people who may guide the shedding of habits that keep us from our wholeness, and the responsibilities that we may then take on for the wholeness of our communities. And what kept him up at night is that the human-led destruction of the world is accelerating, and therefore commencing at a faster rate than we may build and grow and cultivate the people who may build and grow and cultivate wholeness. And I said to my teacher, now I will stay up at night. And he said, good. Then perhaps we may do something about this state of affairs. As we, the collective generations of people who are alive at this moment, who come from legions of ancestors and move out toward legions of descendants, irrespective of whether we personally have children or not. As we traverse through eons of time and thousands of miles, what are we bringing with us? And what are we moving toward? The fractures of who we are, the heartbrokenness, not to be discarded, not to be covered over. The opening, really, actually, to see and feel what may be possible in spite of, and perhaps even because of it. Both ancient and young, we as humans becoming, we are still struggling in ways that other beings haven't had to figure out. The innumerable plant and animal beings, the amphibians and the insects, the small rocks and mountain ranges, the wind and the light, the rain falling in places where I live, making its way as congregate water deep into the aquifer, to be sipped 7 years hence. And on the surface too, to the world's oceans, and arising as a great column of vapor into rain again. All beings, except for humans, are free from the struggles of figuring out our identity and our purpose. They just are, and more than without deliberate thought. They are in complex and mutual relationship to other beings and the firmament, the earth, and the universe itself. To identify as humans, tell the many stories of our long lineage, to hold and declare our purpose as taking this leap and doing the hard work into the collective and imagined future. I am told that I have spoken too long, or perhaps too slowly. So there will be no questions at this time. But I am glad to be with you for this time. And I hope that someday we might actually meet each other in person and to feel and to experience each other's spirit. Many thanks.